Hi, I'm Nick Vitchev, Research Director for Financial Crime and Compliance at Chartis. I'm very happy to be joined by Adam McLaughlin, Head of Strategy and Subject Matter Expert for AML at NICE Actimize. Hi, Adam.
Hi, thank you for me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Likewise. So AML is a pretty broad topic and a pretty broad coverage area, really. My question to start with really is, can you distill some of the key trends and topics and themes you're seeing across AML?
Yeah, sure. So I think I'd like to start by saying that AML generally over the last, I guess, year, 18 months, possibly been extending into the last 2 years now, it's been exciting, challenging, and quite in terms of what's going on from a regulatory point of view, a legislative point of view, a technology perspective. So, the geopolitical landscape. So there's been so many things happening. It's almost like the perfect storm at the moment in financial crime and compliance. And, all these things are keeping us on our toes a lot at the moment, with lots of new challenges and hurdles to overcome. But I guess what I'm seeing really at the moment, financial crime or an AML point of view, rather, is what I'd like to first off start with is sanctions. Okay, it's always a thing. It's been a thing for years, but it's really picked up a massive pace over the last 18 months since the Russia-Ukraine conflict. We've seen an unprecedented number of names and corporate entities added to sanctions watch lists around the world, primarily in Europe, the UK and the US. And actually, it was only a few weeks ago that I think, across the three regions I just mentioned, about sort of 700 or 800 names to sanctions lists. So this is really a continually evolving landscape for sanctions, and organizations are really looking to how they can improve and optimize their sanctions programs, because the number of additions of names, the constant changes in watch lists, it really keep people on their toes, meaning people have to really make sure that their lists are up to date and they're monitoring those customers in a really accurate way. We then roll into, I guess, the payment screening side of things, which again is something that's rapidly evolving. And not only is it rapidly evolving from a legislation point of view, because the UK, under the Economic Crime Act, changed the thresholds, if you like, for sanctions. So it became a strict liability offence in the UK, which means basically before you could almost have events saying that, well, I put all my controls in place and, I happened to miss this name because it was a complex structure, it was a complex transaction, and how could we possibly found it? But now, rather than being a beyond all reasonable doubt, it's almost a balance of probability. So you should have found it. It's almost on that civil burden of proof now. And so, if you have the right systems of in place, missing a sanctions hit now can be, costly for an organisation from a fine point of view. So that's coming. And then also we've got this evasion perspective on the payment side. And actually, if you look at some of the recent sanctions additions of names, payment evasion, a lot of the companies that are added to sanctions lists are to do with evasion. So in certain key countries where they haven't signed, but also have with countries being utilised as conduits to evade sanctions breaches or help breach sanctions. And so things like network analytics and that now need to come into play to help look at evasion, not just from direct sanctions payments, but also from these third parties. And then I look at transaction monitoring more generically. So outside of sanctions, we have to do transaction monitoring to get suspicion or criminal activity, suspicious activity, not sanctions related. And I guess the underlying foundation of transaction monitoring now is efficiency and effectiveness. Again, this isn't a new term, right? Efficiency and effectiveness has been there for years and years and years, and it will continue to be there for years and years and years, much like sanctions. But I really see this accelerating in terms of people looking at this efficiency effectiveness play and how does it all fit together? Is it efficiency versus effectiveness? Is it efficiency or effectiveness? Or is it efficiency and effectiveness? And if I look at efficiency, ultimately, compliance programs, they cost money. They are increasingly costing more money as the years go on because more people are needed to support it. Regulations getting stricter and tighter, as mentioned, and payments are generally increasing around the globe and get more digital. So people are organizations having to throw more money at compliance programs. However, in the views of organizations, the regulated sector, the banks, a compliance program is a cost center. It's not generating money, it's costing money. And so everyone's looking at how can we be more efficient, how can we use resources we've got in a much more effective way, or a much more efficient way. And ultimately, they look for technology to do that, to reduce the noise, reduce false positives. So this is a real big play I'm seeing. Then we come on to effectiveness. And the way I look at effectiveness is, yes, there could be a cost element to effectiveness, but how are you doing your job? And are you effectively complying, but also doing the right thing, which is spotting suspicious activity and understanding risk? And what I'm increasingly seeing from organizations is, they come in saying, we need to make got the right coverage for our business. We need to make sure that what we're detecting or what we're looking for, at least on a monitoring point of view, is in line with the risk assessment we've created for our products, our services, and our customers and our jurisdictions. And so they're really looking to make sure that they have the right coverage to spot the right risks in order to detect the right suspicious activity at the right time. And I think what I've heard multiple times now from multiple people in multiple organizations around the world, so this is not just one jurisdiction specific, is they want to be the financial institution where suspicious activity is spotted outside of their organization. What I mean by that is they want to be the ones who find the suspicious activity. They don't want someone to come knocking on their door in 1, 2, 3, or 5 years' time saying, oh, by the way, your organization had a criminal funds going through your organization to a large extent. We're investigating it. It's going to go public, and you missed this because you filed no SARS, right? Even less so, what they don't want is a regulator to knock on the door. So, by the way, you should have been reporting this activity. You didn't spot it. Other banks have reported this, but you haven't. Why not? And then there's this real scrutiny in this spotlight on their organization as to why they've missed suspicious activity. So that really comes into play there. It's that efficiency, effectiveness. Can you do things better, spot more suspicious activity, but in a cost constrained environment?
Thanks for that, Adam. One of the key areas and key challenges, and it remains a challenge, and it has been a challenge for a while, that intersects between both efficiency and effectiveness is investigations. I'd like to get your thoughts on where you see investigations going in terms of, is it going to remain the same kind of a challenge? Is it going to increase? And also, some of the innovations that you're seeing that are sort of helping overcome that as a challenge.
Of course. And start with the investigations is, I'd argue, the biggest cost in any compliance program from a human resourcing issue. Organizations can have people working within investigation teams within their organization to work and close alerts. The problem is, when you have that much human capital in an organization working investigations, it does raise issues. First, it raises a consistency issue, which is, all investigators have different skill sets, different skill levels, and therefore different subjects, if you like. Their decisions are different based on that experience. And therefore, you can have this inconsistency in terms of how investigations are worked. So you need to put a lot of controls in place in terms of consistency to a more level standard. You then obviously have a speed issue. So if you've got some complex investigations, they can take a long, long time because the investigators are having to search for information in multiple sources, research it, understand what information means, then interpret that into investigation findings. And then also you then have a retention issue because most compliance programs have a significant number of alerts behind the system. Most of them are, for all intents and purposes, rubbish. It's noise. 90% of those are noise, which investigators just churn out and they close one after the other. From a motivation point of view, that isn't very motivational. So investigators get all the need to best place to be within a compliance program. And I think this is where technology really is coming to its own, because not only is technology helping improve the quality It's also helping to improve the accuracy and the speed of investigation. And there's a number of things that helping organizations do this. Firstly, it's this single view, like this entity-centric view where you have all the information available in one place. It's about having the internal information available. It's also about bringing it to third-party in, because if you look at what an investigator does often, and I expect with investigation teams, they go out to third-party sources, but multiple third-party sources, and gather data that isn't available within their organization. That is very, very time-consuming. But if you can have tools that can do that for you, that is to make tough information just starts to do what to do, which is to make decisions. Okay, they're not going to do and repeated outreaches to third-party systems. They're there to just look at the information and make a decision. If you can what allows them to do that, that is one facet, which is a massive time saver. Okay. Then also what we're seeing is things like network analytics coming into its own. So, often criminals don't work on their own. No man, one criminal, if you like, works on their own. So they'll work in networks, they'll work amongst themselves, and they'll work together using corporate entities, multi-jurisdictional networks. And so if you can build networks and understand who's who and who's connected to, that makes it much easier to understand whether it's suspicious or not. And the final bit I'd like to say around investigation, which is very new, we're at its early stages in terms of really what it can do as technology. It's just huge powerful technology. And this is generative AI. We are seeing it's a connected using generative AI. And like I said, we are just touching the surface of what generative AI can do in compliance programs. But really, at the moment, what it's doing really is summarizing information, summarizing alerts to identify personal points that investigators need to hone in on during investigations. It's summarizing third-party information rather than coming to churn through pages and pages of information from third-party sources. It's summarizing information in a contained way and identifying the persons of the information. And finally, we all know how time-consuming SAR filings can be and the error-prone nature of SAR filings. Well, generative AI can also help there. It can take the information gathered as part of the investigation. It can take the alert information. It can take the customer information and the transaction information, and using large language models can turn that into a concise, detailed narrative, what authorities would expect to receive in order to help them make decisions on whether to investigate the case or not. So generative AI is really helping law enforcement agencies receive better information from the regulated sector by honing in on the details within the narrative, reducing human error, increasing quality, increasing consistency, and making us much better, handling much better just the laws to help fight financial crime.
Thanks. I'm glad you mentioned the retention piece, because that's actually one of the findings of this report when we spoke to end users, banks, FIs, etc. That was something that came up as a growing opportunity for things like case management. So actually giving people the right tools can make them happy in their jobs, make them do their jobs better, but also it can enable them to upskill themselves. And of course, that leads to greater job satisfaction and the rest. So, I'm glad you mentioned that as well. And also, one very neatly, that efficiency and effectiveness that, again, good tools can bring together. So, yes, thank you very much for this. Really appreciate it. It's been great talking to you, Alan, and getting your insight and your knowledge.